The rain hammered against the windshield of Sarah's Honda as she squinted through the darkness, her knuckles white against the steering wheel. The GPS had died 20 miles back, leaving her with nothing but a crumpled gas station map and the vague directions from the realtor. Turn left at the old Miller farm. Follow the dirt road for 3 miles. Look for the green mailbox. She'd been driving for 6 hours straight from the city, eager to escape the suffocating grief that had consumed her life since Michael's death 3 months ago. The inheritance from her great-aunt Helen couldn't have come at a better time. A house in the mountains, completely paid off, far from the memories that haunted every corner of her apartment. The headlights swept across a rusted mailbox, its green paint peeling like diseased skin. This had to be it. Sarah turned onto what could generously be called a driveway, though it felt more like a hiking trail. Branches scraped against the car's sides as she navigated the winding path through dense pine trees that seemed to lean inward, creating a tunnel of shadow even her high beams couldn't fully penetrate. After what felt like an eternity, the trees parted to reveal a 2-story Victorian house, its dark windows staring down at her like hollow eyes. The structure looked solid enough, though decades of neglect had left their mark. Paint peeled from the wooden siding in long curling strips, and several shutters hung at odd angles. But it was hers now, and more importantly, it was isolated. No neighbors, no noise, no well-meaning friends stopping by to check on her. Sarah parked and sat for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled. The rain had softened to a steady patter, and through it she could hear something else, a rhythmic creaking that could have been tree branches swaying in the wind. She grabbed her overnight bag and the manila envelope containing the house keys and deed, then made a dash for the covered porch. The front door key slid in easily, as if it had been waiting for her. Sarah stepped inside and fumbled along the wall until her fingers found a light switch. A bare bulb flickered to life, revealing a modest entryway with hardwood floors and faded floral wallpaper. The air smelled of dust and something else, something organic and slightly sweet, that made her think of flowers left too long in a vase. The downstairs was simple but functional. A living room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen with appliances that belonged in a museum, and a small bathroom tucked under what appeared to be a staircase. Sarah climbed those stairs, her footsteps echoing in the silence, and found 2 bedrooms and another bathroom on the 2nd floor. The master bedroom faced the back of the property, and through its rain-streaked window, she could see nothing but darkness stretching into the forest. Exhausted from the drive, Sarah decided to explore more thoroughly in the morning. She made up the bed with sheets she'd brought from home, changed into her pajamas, and was asleep within minutes of her head hitting the pillow. She woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom window and the sound of someone walking around downstairs. Her heart jumped as she sat up, listening intently. Footsteps crossed the living room, paused, then continued toward what sounded like the kitchen. Sarah grabbed her phone from the nightstand, no signal of course, and crept to the bedroom door. "Hello?" she called out, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. "Is someone there?" The footsteps stopped immediately. Sarah waited, counting her heartbeats, but heard nothing else. After several minutes, she worked up the courage to go downstairs and investigate. The rooms were empty, everything exactly as she'd left it the night before. The front door was still locked, as were all the windows she checked. Old houses settle, she told herself, especially when the temperature changes. Sarah spent the morning exploring the property and making a mental list of needed repairs. The house was in better shape than its exterior suggested, though the electrical system was definitely dated and the plumbing made concerning noise. But it would do for now, and she found herself feeling something she hadn't experienced in months, a sense of possibility. It was while she was cleaning the kitchen that she first noticed the stairs. Not the main staircase she'd climbed the night before, but a narrower set of steps, tucked behind a door she'd assumed was a pantry. These stairs descended into what must be a basement or cellar. Sarah tried the light switch at the top of the steps, but nothing happened. She'd need to find a flashlight before venturing down. She was rummaging through the kitchen drawers when she heard the footsteps again, but this time they seemed to be coming from above her. Slow, deliberate steps crossing back and forth across the floor of the master bedroom. Sarah froze, a wooden spoon clutched in her hand like a weapon. "Hello?" she called again. "I know someone's up there." The footsteps stopped abruptly, just as they had that morning. Sarah waited, but the house had returned to its watchful silence. She climbed the stairs as quietly as possible, but found the 2nd floor empty. All the doors were exactly as she'd left them, and there was nowhere for an intruder to hide. Maybe she was losing her mind. Grief could do that to people, couldn't it? Make them hear things that weren't there, see shadows where there were none. But the footsteps had sounded so real, so deliberate. That evening, as darkness crept across the mountains, Sarah tried to settle into some semblance of normalcy. She'd found a battery-powered radio in one of the kitchen drawers and managed to pick up a local station that played classic rock. The music helped fill the oppressive silence that seemed to press against the windows like something alive. She was heating a can of soup on the ancient gas stove when she heard it, a single footstep from somewhere in the house, followed by a long pause, then another step. This time, the sound seemed to be coming from the cellar stairs. Sarah turned off the burner and moved carefully toward the door she discovered that morning. The steps were definitely coming from below, but they had an odd quality to them. Not the normal footfall of someone walking, but a slower, more deliberate sound, as if each step required tremendous effort, or as if someone was carrying something heavy. Sarah's hand hovered over the basement door's handle. Every instinct screamed at her to leave it alone, to go back to her soup and pretend she hadn't heard anything. But she'd spent 3 months hiding from reality, and she was tired of being afraid. She eased the door open and peered into the darkness below. "Hello? Is someone down there?" The footsteps stopped immediately, but this time Sarah thought she heard something else. A sound like fabric rustling, or leaves being disturbed. She waited, holding her breath, but the silence stretched on. Sarah found a flashlight in the utility drawer and clicked it on, sending a beam of white light down the narrow stairs. The beam revealed wooden steps that looked much older than those in the main part of the house, their surfaces worn smooth by decades of use. She could see perhaps 6 or 7 steps before the flashlight beam disappeared into the black. Against every horror movie instinct she'd ever developed, Sarah began to descend. The stairs creaked under her weight, but they felt solid enough. The air grew cooler as she went down, and that sweet organic smell she'd noticed the night before grew stronger. It reminded her of something, but she couldn't place what. After 12 steps, she expected to reach the bottom, but the stairs continued downward. Sarah paused, playing the flashlight beam ahead of her. She could see perhaps 6 more steps, but beyond that was only darkness. This was odd. The house didn't look tall enough from the outside to accommodate such a deep basement. She continued down, counting, 20 steps, 30. The walls on either side were rough stone now, not the finished wood of the upper house. Water seeped between the stones in places, and the air had developed a damp, earthy quality that made her think of caves. At 40 steps, Sarah stopped and looked back. She could no longer see the door at the top, just darkness above and darkness below. The beam of her flashlight seemed weaker now, as if the blackness was swallowing the light. This didn't make sense. She'd been walking for several minutes, but she couldn't have descended more than 20 or 30 feet. A sound echoed from somewhere below. Not footsteps this time, but something like a sigh or wind moving through a narrow space. Sarah aimed the flashlight downward and saw the stairs continuing into the black. How deep did they go? Common sense finally reasserted itself. She was alone in a strange house, following mysterious sounds into what appeared to be an impossibly deep basement. This was exactly how people ended up as cautionary tales. Sarah turned around and began to climb back up, but after 20 steps, she hadn't reached the door. She should have been back at kitchen level by now, but the stairs just kept going up into darkness. Sarah stopped, her heart beginning to race. She'd counted 40 steps down, and she'd definitely climbed more than 40 steps back up. Where was the door? She climbed faster, taking the steps 2 at a time, but they seemed to stretch endlessly above her. The flashlight beam wavered as her hands began to shake. This wasn't possible. Staircases didn't work this way. There had to be a logical explanation. After what felt like 100 steps, Sarah stopped and forced herself to think. Maybe she was disoriented. Maybe the stress of the move and the grief over Michael's death was causing her to panic and lose count. She took a deep breath and started climbing again, this time counting carefully. 10 steps, 20, 30, 50, 100. The stairs showed no sign of ending, and now she could hear something below her. Footsteps again, but multiple sets this time, as if several people were climbing up after her. The sounds echoed strangely in the narrow stairwell, making it impossible to tell how close they were. Sarah began to run, taking the steps 3 at a time, her flashlight beam dancing wildly across the stone wall. The footsteps below were definitely getting closer, and she could hear something else now. Voices. Though she couldn't make out words, they sounded old, tired, as if they were coming from a great distance. Her lungs burned and her legs ached, but she kept climbing. Behind her the voices grew clearer, though they seemed to be speaking in a language she didn't recognize. Or maybe it was English, but the words were so distorted by the echo that they'd become meaningless. Just when she thought her legs would give out, Sarah's flashlight beam hit something different. A door. Not the door she'd entered through, which had been painted white, but a heavy wooden door bound with iron straps, like something from a medieval castle. It was set into the stone wall at what appeared to be a landing. Sarah rushed toward it and grabbed the iron handle, but it wouldn't turn. She threw her shoulder against the wood, but it didn't budge. The voices behind her were getting louder, and she could now make out individual words, though they still didn't make sense. The appointment, one voice said clear as a bell. She missed the appointment. 3 months, said another. 3 months she's been running. Sarah pressed her ear to the door, listening for sounds from the other side, hoping to hear something that would tell her she was still in the normal world. Instead, she heard footsteps on the stairs above. Someone else climbing down from wherever this door led. Trapped between voices below and footsteps above, Sarah did the only thing she could think of. She continued climbing. The stairs above the mysterious door were different. Instead of rough stone, they were carved from what looked like black marble. So smooth and perfect they seemed almost organic. The walls here were closer together, forcing Sarah to climb single file, and they curved slightly, as if she was climbing the inside of a tower. The voices below had faded, but the footsteps above were definitely getting closer. Sarah could hear them clearly now, a slow, measured pace, like someone descending very carefully. Between the footfalls she thought she heard something else, a sound like fabric dragging across stone. Sarah turned off the flashlight and pressed herself against the wall, hoping whoever was coming down wouldn't see her in the darkness. The footsteps grew closer, accompanied by that rustling sound, and now she could smell something new. Not the sweet organic scent from before, but something chemical and sharp, like antiseptic. A light appeared around the curve above her. Not the white beam of a flashlight, but a softer, yellow glow like candlelight. The footsteps paused, and Sarah heard a voice, a woman's voice, cultured and patient. "Sarah, dear, where are you going?" Sarah's blood turned to ice. The voice was familiar, though she couldn't place it. Someone who knew her name. Here in this impossible place. "There's nowhere to run, sweetheart. You've been running for 3 months now, and look where it's gotten you." The light began moving again, coming around the curve, and Sarah could see the source. Not a candle, but some kind of phosphorescent glow emanating from the figure carrying it. The figure itself was draped in what looked like a hospital gown, and it moved with the careful, deliberate pace of someone who was very ill or very old. Sarah turned the flashlight back on and ran, bounding up the stairs 3 at a time. Behind her, the voice called out again. "The appointment is waiting, dear. Dr. Morrison is very patient, but even he has limits." Dr. Morrison. The name hit Sarah like a physical blow, and suddenly the sweet organic smell made sense. Flowers, hospital flowers, and the antiseptic scent, the chemical sharpness, that was disinfectant. She'd been running from Dr. Morrison's appointment for 3 months, ever since Michael's death. The appointment to discuss treatment options, to talk about the lump they'd found, to decide what came next. She'd canceled it the day after the funeral and never rescheduled. The calls from the office had stopped after a few weeks, but the appointment had never really gone away, had it? The stairs leveled out onto another landing, this one with multiple doors leading off in different directions. Sarah tried the first one, locked. The second locked, the third opened easily, and she stumbled through into what looked like a hospital corridor. The walls were that particular shade of institutional green that healthcare facilities seem to favor, and the floor was polished linoleum that reflected the fluorescent lights over. The air hummed with the sound of ventilation systems and distant machinery. Sarah could hear voices coming from somewhere ahead, nurses talking about patient charts, the squeak of wheels on linoleum, the muted beeping of monitors. This was wrong. This was impossible. She'd been in the basement of her inherited house, climbing stairs that couldn't exist, And now she was somehow in a hospital. But as she walked down the corridor, reading the room numbers and department signs, everything felt absolutely real. A nurse appeared beside her as if from nowhere, a pleasant-faced woman in scrubs, decorated with cheerful cartoon characters. "Dr. Morrison is ready to see you now." "I don't understand," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "How did I get here?" "I was in my house. You've been running, dear," the nurse said, her voice gentle but firm. "Running for 3 months. But some appointments can't be avoided forever." The nurse took Sarah's arm and guided her down the corridor to a familiar door. Sarah had memorized the number from the appointment card she'd thrown away after Michael's funeral. Inside, she could see a figure in a white coat sitting behind a desk, writing in a chart. "I'm not ready," Sarah said, pulling back. "I need more time. I just inherited this house. I have a whole new life planned." "The house was never real, sweetheart." The nurse's grip was surprisingly strong. "The inheritance, the great Aunt Helen, the escape to the mountains, that was all just you running down a very long staircase, trying to avoid reaching the bottom." Sarah looked back the way she'd come and saw that the corridor stretched impossibly far into the distance, much farther than she'd walked. At the very end, barely visible, was a door that looked like it might lead to a basement staircase in an old Victorian house. "But I felt it," Sarah said desperately. "The rain, the drive, the footsteps in the house. It was all so real." "The mind can create very convincing stories," the nurse said, "when it's desperate enough to avoid the truth. But you can't climb stairs forever, dear. Eventually you have to reach the bottom." The door to room 314 opened, and Dr. Morrison looked out. He was exactly as Sarah remembered. Kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, graying beard, the sort of face that was trained to deliver bad news with compassion. "Hello, Sarah," he said quietly. "I know this is difficult, but we really do need to talk about those test results." Sarah looked back one more time at the endless corridor, at the door that led to the staircase, that led to a house that had never existed. She thought about Michael, who'd never had the chance to run from his diagnosis, who'd faced his treatment with a courage she'd never been able to summon for herself. The stairs had been long and dark and terrifying, but they'd brought her exactly where she needed to be. "I know," Sarah said, and stepped into the room. "I'm ready now." Behind her, the corridor began to fade, and with it the sound of footsteps climbing endless stairs, searching for appointments that could never be avoided forever. Some staircases, Sarah realized, weren't meant to take you away from something. They were meant to bring you home.